Remember what I said about hope provoking rebellion? That hope is what you're saying, galvanizing the system. It might prove substantive. It might not be. But nobody is going to say that we abandoned the space and left that space to a Milokon and Etiku to be talking between themselves. The Nigerian youth have come to the knowledge of the fact that not all of them are going to be able to japa. And if the people who have jackpot have spoken with them as well as I believe they have, they also know that there is very little to be found in jackpaing, because when you jackpot, you are jackpaing to a place where you are going to be wearing clothes like albosa, onions, multiple layers of clothing. These are black dye. It wasn't made for that cold place. Your skin needs the sun, and then you are forced to live in it, and then you are taking vitamin D supplements so that the sun that you are losing, that you not get. So it's come to the point where a lot of young persons, and they are the ones who are actually going to drive any change if there must be change. If there must be change, it's the youth that will drive that change. I preached some messages years back. I call it Youth Quake. Youth Quake was meant to let the young people understand that it would take their own collective acting in concert to move anything, if anything is going to move. The established old order is happy with the status quo. They don't want anything to change. It is not in their interest for anything to change. So those who are the victims of the system, largely the youth, whose futures are being mortgaged with the stupid loans they are taking and spending. Look at Lagos State. 16 years building a light rail line, and they are busy crowing and talking about it as though it were to be a success. 16 years or thereabout. At maybe about 4 or 5 times the cost that it should have been, and they want us to celebrate that. Do you know who will pay the bill? The youth. You turn on taps in Lagos State, water is not flowing, but the debts are there. Tinubu has already taken the loan to build what he did not build. So even though you are not going to have water when you turn on your tap, you still pay that debt. So they are piling up. Look at Rail to Maradi, is the youth that will pay the debt. So all kinds of debts are being piled up, which the youth, who are already overburdened, are going to pay. So when you connect them to the issues as we are trying to connect them to the issues, what you find is that they are becoming more and more energized, and hope breeds rebellion.
Let's look at INEC's preparedness. Do you see INEC conducting a free, fair election?
It will be a pipe dream for anyone to imagine that INEC is preparing for a free and fair election. INEC has already begun the process of rigging the 2023 election. When you see the number of people that they have deregistered or failed to complete their registration, you know very quickly that you are seeing an active gerrymandering already going on, especially given the zoning of the bulk of those who are being denied their franchise. So already you can see clearly that INEC is not interested in a free and fair election. That's one. Second thing, PVC collection. Up till date, INEC has not commenced the release of PVCs to those who are registered since. I would imagine that the idea should be to make it easy for people to vote, not to make it difficult or impossible for them to vote. Nigeria has a substantial population in the diaspora. There has been no move whatsoever to allow those ones the vote, simply because the electoral system that we have in Nigeria today appears to be more interested in limiting access to the ballot rather than increasing access to the ballot, which is why I've always said, and I'm repeating, we are not actually a democracy. We are just playing the game of democracy. In playing the game of democracy, we who consider ourselves conscious we take the opportunity to awaken those we believe to be somnambulists. So as we are awakening them, connecting them to the issues, we already know, we are not so stupid as not to know that this is not a democracy. But the more of the sleeping ones that we manage to awaken and connect to the issues, the more the people that we might be able to mobilize in future when the time comes to confront this system. You cannot confront the system with tokenist gestures. There must be a broad-based mass mobilization. The electoral process, more than any other process within these Nigerian states, offers us that opportunity. So in the course of electioneering, you tell the people what is important. You help them to look beyond the hatred that has been planted in their heart, which makes it difficult for them to see the commonalities of the afflictions around the country. And then when you have connected them to the issue, it becomes easier to introduce them to revolutionary ideas as to how they might change their circumstances. If you are talking over their heads, they won't hear you. But if you are speaking with them on the basis of a process that has been offered and to a very large extent normalized, then it becomes easy to find them where they are. It becomes that much more difficult for the state to also silence you. Political education to the victims. In giving them political education, you connect them to the fact of their humanity and the fact that they have a choice. You actually have a choice. Telling people and letting them come to the knowledge of the fact that they have a choice might sound like such a simple thing, but it's not.
No.
Weaponized ignorance.
Now, let's get this clearly.
Okay.
You spoke about the fact that INEC is already preparing the ground
Yes.
to disenfranchise,
Yes.
in quote, the will of the people, so to
Yes.
say. And wouldn't that lead to the truncation of the hope
So
of
when
the people
hope is truncated,
it
what did I
eventually
tell
leads,
you about hope?
it eventually leads to a rebellion. It provokes
Good.
but consider the fact that you are actually dealing with a set of deaf individuals, and you said you have never even supported, you have repeatedly said you have never supported a protest.
Yeah, I'm coming there.
So what kind of rebellion are we talking about, and what should Nigerians be doing now to confront and mitigate against those eventualities?
The difference between anarchy and a revolution is the presence of a plan for the day after. Anger without control is chaos. So you're talking to the people to come into a process that you are not stupid enough to ignore its corruption. So you're already aware that it's a crooked game. I spent, I think, a 4-part series talking to the PVC or the gun, and I laid this out in that series. And what I explained then is what I'll repeat now. So hope has been provoked. The people are hopeful. And then the system comes and it snatches that hope. What do you have?
A rebellion.
You have a rebellion. You have anger. Not rebellion first. It's always anger first. So you have anger. What do you do with the angry? A wise man or wise persons would educate anger. In educating anger, you feed the desire for change. The difference between a revolution and anarchy is a plan for the day after. We are getting to a point in Nigeria where the person who reasons is being made to look like the fool. Because those who should reason along with you have lost the capacity to reason. So the insane looks like the sane, and the sane is labeled insane. But it does not change the fact that when you work in concert, as we are wont to do during electoral seasons like this, the first thing you are doing is that you are reaching out to people across the length and breadth of the country. You are connecting them to the commonalities of their pains, of their affliction. You are helping the person in Kankara, the Fulani man in Kankara. You are helping him to see that the pain of the man in Igbo is not unlike his own pain in Kankara, and yet their mutual tormentor are all of the Fulani stock. So it is not about the stock of the perpetrator. That's the first thing you are connecting for him. It's about the failure of the state, who is meant to provide the security but has failed. And not only failed, but is mollycoddling the criminality. So if you have done that successfully, the man in Kankara and the man in Igbo, they see, if you've succeeded in doing your own job, they see that even though we are separated by ethnicity, by distance, even perhaps by religion, we have a common problem. That problem might be rooted in an ethnicity, but it's actually the failure of governance. When you look to issues like education, the poor across the length and breadth of Nigeria, whose children have sat at home for the last 8 to 9 months, while this government and governors and everybody have been busy gallivanting around and sorting out their own class issues. Whether that man is Hausa, whether he's Igbo, whether he's Fulani, whatever he is, maybe he's Ijo, he can see that it didn't make any difference to the government. But we members of the middle class who have abandoned Nigeria to its fate, we are taking our children either to Ghana. Some people were in Ukraine until the war in Ukraine drove them out. Cyprus. Nigerians take their, if you can afford it, you take your children out of Nigeria to be educated. I was looking at figures yesterday saying that we spent about 1.something billion in school fees in the UK alone last year. Do the maths. That money would have been sufficient to fix our educational system. These are the common threads that we have the opportunity during this period, more than at any other period, to connect the people to. When the government and the system now violently snatches away that right to choose, what happens? The original message is being preached by the likes of Afenifere, demanding restructuring before transition. What do you think happens in that atmosphere? The message is heard, because we are not the only ones talking about it. The fact that the opportunity offered by the system, as crooked as it is, would now have been taken away to enthrone one of these evils would be sufficient basis to call the people out into a campaign of civil disobedience leading to the desired changes. If we cannot have the changes we desire through the electoral system, because you must understand that it's not just that Peter Obi loses or some. If he loses the election, and everyone can see that it is free and fair, it's a democracy. We must, as Democrats, raise our hands, concede defeat, and then re-strategize and plan for the next election if it is free and fair. If it is free and fair, it wouldn't be the first time a candidate would lose in an election. But if it is an hijack of the people's wishes, if somebody brings all those moonslide, fantastic election results that they are wont to bring, if all of a sudden on election day beavers suddenly are not working, if on election day you have the space overtaken with agberos, stopping people from voting, and then we will talk about irregularities. But if the election is free and fair, we must, as Democrats, accept the consequences of elections. The question is, would INEC allow for a free and fair election? I don't expect them to, but it's for them to prove me right or wrong. It's an objective test. We all know when elections are free and we know when they are not. If Elections are going to be monitored. People are going to come out to vote. These are easily demonstrable. If it's not free, we will know. If it is free, we will know. But if it is a free and fair election and a candidate loses in an election, you must of necessity accept the judgment of the poll.
There's a question I actually wanted to ask, and that has to do with Peter Obi and IPOB.
Please.
There's insinuations that IPOB had said they never wanted elections in the southeast, and they are not in support of the elections as well as in Peter Obi's presidency or an Igbo presidency. How's Peter Obi going to reconcile that? And there are insinuations that Peter Obi might not even be able to have a rally or hold a rally in the southeast, considering the state of insecurity in the southeast. And now Tinubu has gone ahead to dare IPOB by saying he's going to hold rallies on days, Mondays, which have been declared days off. I mean, how do you reconcile that?
If I ever required evidence of the failure of the Nigerian state, you just offered it in that question. Peter Obi is a private citizen. He has no coercive powers. He's not even a government functionary. And he is not cozy enough with the powers that be in Nigeria for his wife to be flying private Nigerian presidential jets around on campaign. So it is actually impossible to expect Peter Obi to be the one to offer security in any part of Nigeria or even the southeast for that matter. IPOB is not shy in setting out its agenda. Do I agree with its tactics? I don't. But can I quarrel with the grievances of IPOB? I cannot. So when IPOB says that its strategic objective is to take the southeast out of Nigeria, that is a policy position that they have taken, and as I have said, I have no quarrel with their position. I might quarrel with tactics, and I do. Now, IPOB does not also exist in a vacuum. It is a conglomeration of persons. In this case, of southeastern origin. IPOB must act through persons. It's not a chimera. It must act through agents, human agents. If IPOB is pervasive enough and persuasive enough to get the people of the southeast not to engage with the process, that should tell you the extent to which Nigeria has sunk. So it is not on Peter Obi, that is entirely on the Nigerian state. Now, that Elilokon has said that he wants to be having rallies in the southeast, of course, he will say that. He might. What does it take for the APC to roll out 100 soldiers to provide security for their campaign that they have not managed to provide for the persons living in the place? I cannot speak to his own security arrangement, but I do know that if I had the instrumentality of corrupt powers behind me, even if IPOB might decide to drop, at the end of the day, it will hardly be touching any big man. It's the poor that will be the victims. So it doesn't, so far as that goes, I would imagine that the East is a marketplace of ideas. IPOB will sell his ideas. Peter Obi would attempt to sell his own ideas to the people as well. Nobody is discounting the grievances of IPOB. This is just an attempt to try and see, perhaps there might be a way back for Nigeria, for all of us. There is nobody really, except people in the ruling class, who are happy with the Nigeria we are in. So IPOB is within his right to propagate his ideas. It is the violence that I decry. That's all.
How prepared is Peter Obi, from your own assessment and from your perspective, to wrestle power from these bands come 2023?
You see, I think it should be how prepared are Nigerians. I have had the pleasure of Peter Obi's company maybe about 3 or 4 times, but the one thing that I have found quite striking about the man is his quiet resolve. The man will strike you like, you know, in street parlance, we'll say bolo. But that would be an error, it would be a major error. It's making the error of assumption is very easy to make around Peter Obi. He's quiet. He doesn't give off any menacing horror. But you will soon find that behind that calm mien and exterior, there is a steely inert. The man has coyones. Let me just put it that way. You know, you don't take over Anambra from the Ubas if you don't have coyones. You must have steely resolve to have gone into Anambra when he went into Anambra in 2003 with the Bakassi boys and the whole lot. The man went around the 177 towns and villages to sell his ideas to the people. So I believe that the man is sufficiently ready. It is the Nigerian people that must be readied. Because what the man is demanding of us is that we become citizens. You can't make Peter Obi the president of Nigeria if you don't become citizens. It takes citizens to change what the system demands. The system will prefer anybody but a Peter Obi. Let me not exaggerate. Let me just say that between those 3, Peter Obi will be the last person the system would want. That's just a fact. So for him to become, we as a collective, as a people, must have become first. We have to become before he can become. It will be us coming to the knowledge of the powers of our collective choices. It is that knowledge that can produce a Peter Obi. He doesn't have the structures, quote and unquote. So how else is he going to win if we don't decide to make him? So it's only up to the people. It's not him. He is prepared. That he would even, what he has done, look, revolutionaries will not always come clenching their fists. You have to look at what the person has done. Election has come with the many dramas that accompanies it, character assassination, exaggerations here and there, but the records are in the public space. A man ruled a state for 8 years, broken with interregnums in between because of all the court battles and everything. And he spent time in that place and left the office to applause, general applause. You might have all kind of revisionism going on left and right, but the fact is that the man was prepared for governance. He delivered. I was asked to review a book on him recently, so I was forced, for the first time, to contemplate the man from perhaps a detached intellectual standpoint, because I was reading other people's account of the man, and I was reading from people who are essentially scholars, even though they might be said to be partisan. So they approached the treatment of the man from the angle of the scholar, and I found very quickly that, one, the man had clarity of vision as to what he wanted to do with power. He got into office, he took the UNDP, Millennium Development Goals, those targets, he domesticated them within Anambra. In the 8 years he spent there, he made sure that a general hospital was built in each local government. This is not something that I knew before I read the book I was reviewing. And then I was saying to myself, if a man will build a general hospital in every local government, that was minus the primary healthcare centers and other things, what would have happened if Lagos had had such a master plan where each local government is getting a general hospital? But the question is not about Lagos, so I'll restrict myself to Anambra. What I saw from reading, I saw the man he tied over 500 kilometers of roads in Anambra with erosion protection during his time there. The man made sure The ICT labs are opened in all secondary schools. That's a conscious look. There is something about vision. It constrains your spending. It constrains how you allocate resources because you have a vision that requires resourcing. So because the man went into Anambra with a vision for governance, he focused resources in critical parts and he still managed to save money. I have seen pieces where they've abused him for having a savings account for the government, but that shows you how far we are falling as a people when we even pillory a person for saving government money. He saved money for the subsequent administration to find. That is not normal. So when you talk about being prepared, I think the man is more than prepared.
Finally, there are apprehensions and fears among Nigerians. Will the elections actually really hold, considering the various security reports that have been talked about in recent times, especially from diplomatic communities? Do you see us, this country, conducting elections come 2020?
See, I am on record as having said severally that the biggest sponsor of destabilization and terrorism in Nigeria is the Nigerian government led by General Muhammadu Buhari. And there are harmful bases, empirical bases. The United Arab Emirates sent a list of terrorism sponsors in Nigeria. The Attorney General said so out in the open. Until today, over a year after, not a single person is being prosecuted. Their co-accused who are in the UAE are already convicted. But the ones in Nigeria, they are roaming around free. Nigeria protects terrorists under the watch of General Buhari. That's one. Second thing, Commodore Laomi came out on national television. I believe he was on channels. And he was equivocal. He was unequivocal in pointing out the fact that he was on a committee and they submitted their report to General Buhari. That report has names of persons sat in General Buhari's government who are sponsors of Boko Haram. That there are people in the Senate who are sponsors of Boko Haram. That there are governors who are sponsors of Boko Haram. He didn't say it in a conclave somewhere. He said it on national television. Nobody has denied it. This is important. Nobody has denied it. This government has a reputation for mollycoddling terrorists. Buhari would even pretend sometimes that he can't understand what you are saying when you are asking questions. But make the error of asking him any question that relates to Sunday Igboho or Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, and then you see the man come alive. And then you see how energetic and animated the man is, and he puts the lie to his pretense of dementia. He's not demented, he's wicked. So when you see all this hovering around, and then you read into that all the security reports and security alerts being released by the Americans and the Europeans, you find that one, these people don't trust our government. So because they don't trust our government, they are deliberately releasing the information into the public space so that the citizens, quote and unquote, because we are not citizens, might become aware of just exactly how debauched, debased and evil the government ruling our country is. Now, in the midst of all of this, it becomes very easy to despair and say, oh, the election might not hold. Even if the election might not hold, this system must die with that election that might not hold. If election is not holding, it will not be because we are preserving this evil and unjust system. We will continue to prepare for an election in the belief that better judgment and common sense will prevail. Because no single hegemony can lord it over a conscious people. And Nigerians are sufficiently awake. Let one stupid brigadier general something be announcing something, we'll be on the street. Let them start it first. But the important thing is, the people must be sufficiently awakened so that they know what is coming. And as far as I can see, anything is better than this Buhari government. That's assuming he's not a Milocon following in his wake, because that one is even threatening to be a bigger disaster than the current one. But I don't believe for 1 second that any general this or that is going to be able to hold Nigeria together if they dare to do something silly. You never can tell what will happen in Nigeria. It's sometimes the Charlie Boy show. Anything can happen. However, so that we might not be reactionaries, we have a duty to commit to our chosen path, continue to educate the people and prepare them for the elections. But even as we are doing that, we are not mindful of the machinations of others who might prefer that there be no election because it's obvious that they are going to lose. But this is not the Nigeria of 1984, of 1993. I'm not sure any lover of Nigeria would do anything to truncate the coming election, except it is because we want to focus on changing our governance system and then transiting based on a new constitution. But for now, the game in town is the 2023 election. And that is what the people are focused on, and that's what we are expecting to take part in. If the powers that be now decide they want to introduce a new game, we would measure our response and we'll respond appropriately. But Nigeria is not going to be the playground of any military dictator. That can't work.
Jeff, thank you so much for your insight.
Always a pleasure.